Icebergs.
Global warming.
Temperature increasing.
Hot. Literally, the first thing that came was hot.
Yeah.
There's heat, thermal radiation to do with that. There's heat.
Climate change is in the background, I think, all the time, in all that we do, in all the decisions we take.
Yeah, I do think about it quite a lot. Or it's often in the news, so it doesn't really sort of leave you. You know, it's something that you are reminded about continually.
Hugely high temperatures.
I do feel guilty when I take a plane. That's for sure.
It means that there is no reliable prospect except the prospect of unreliability.
I lived in countryside, and you feel the air being light, being like easy to breathe. But in central over here, which is like very polluted, you feel it every day. I feel it.
I questioned myself why I care so much about the environment, but I actually don't do anything for it.
I talk about it a lot with my friends. I think about climate change a lot, actually mostly when I'm in the supermarket, which sounds really stupid, but but I feel like I'm really faced with quite a decision when you get to the supermarket. It's huge, so much choice.
There was a media consciousness in the United States in the late 70s that kind of carried over into the early 80s that I was a part of. So, I remember growing up with Captain Planet and having, environmental rallies at my elementary school.
I take small individual steps, and then I sometimes make large decisions, irrespective of the damage I know them to be doing, like flying.
I'm not as good as I'd like to be about where I buy my food from. I try to be a bit seasonal. We've got an allotment, things like that, but I still get fruit and veg that you look at the label and think, oh, blimey, where's that come from? No, I'm not as good as I should be.
Fun enough, 2 of my colleagues, travel writers, actually stopped travelling because of it, because of the awareness of global warming or climate change.
We're really careful about heating without kind of being too boring about it. And my husband and I have the Cold War. I turn it off, the heating, he turns it back on again. So really, I benefit that way. The moral high ground and still warm.
There used to be a time when the environment was not a partisan thing. It wasn't something that people debated. It was the planet that we all shared. So because I know that it's so partisan, it does impact how I vote.
I'm part of the problem, actually, that I think, especially in this country, in the UK, climate change is an issue and we should be doing things about it, but there are also lots of other big issues. And when I come to vote, I think because we're not facing climate change problems right now in the UK, in London where I live, I always think, well, there's actually some other more pressing issues that need attention now.
I think I'm in the minority of people who are voting with their conscience on this issue, but I think I'm in the majority of people who have it as a consciousness and have it as something that they're worried about.
I vote Green Party every time there's an election because I personally think climate change is important and I think it should be considered. And even though they get the minority, every little makes a difference.
The poor refugees kind of flooding across the Mediterranean, that is a result of climate change. These are economic migrants. They're not coming from war. They're coming because they cannot live in their own countries. And one of the reasons why they can't live is they can't farm. And they can't farm because no rain.
I think we're in a really privileged position that we don't see the effects of climate change that much in our lives. I know that it's starting to kind of, we're seeing a lot more flooding, maybe in the south of England, things like that. But I mean, especially living in London, we just don't see it at all. So when you don't see it every day, you don't really see that it's a pressing issue, and we're definitely not doing enough.
So that's the reason why I'm really concerned about it, because even though it's not really affecting me directly, it is affecting the world we live in, and maybe it's going to affect how our children will live and the future generations.
Climate change, I believe, is the biggest issue nowadays all over the world. But I still think it's the issue we talk less about, and it should be actually the major topic all over the news. Really the first one. I know it's full of problems all around, but I believe that's the major one.
The thing about climate change is that if you start worrying about it, you can be paralysed by fear. So it's quite important to not be worried about it and just take action to do your small bit, or the bit that is relevant to you.
I think that this story, which haunts us all at the back of our minds, isn't at the front because it's just too gloomy. We need it to be happy.
I can't see how the capitalist system can continue to run as it does at the moment, with the people at the bottom getting such a poor deal and this tiny number of people at the top of the system creaming off all the money.
We are led to believe that we have to go for growth in the economy. I'm not an economist, as you know, but I don't think that's necessarily the way we should be looking. I think maybe a whole shift is necessary, and I don't think it's going to happen because there's too much vested interest in businesses and short-term political thinking.
The way that the commercial system operates and ignores climate change and behaves as if there's another planet waiting for us around the corner, that kind of just pillaging of natural resources, it can't continue unabated forever.
You'd see it on Brixton Road where children are choking on gas-filled air. That to me seems atrocious for a country that has, led the world in a lot of progressive policies. England was minting geniuses when the world was still getting its trousers on. So it's kind of strange that they're so behind on this one issue.
It's really unfair to berate everyday citizens and say, you must take individual action and sort this problem out, because actually it's at a political level that we can really, really make a difference.
Well, it's like you have to compare it to different other problems. If there's big problems going around, you see people will be telling their children about it or say, yo, learn about it, all those things. But it's not that much of a problem where everyone talks about it on a daily basis. People talk about bigger problems let's say racism or whatever. It's not the same level of
seriousness.
But I also believe environment doesn't sell as much as wars or politics. So. And the government doesn't seem to be tackling it in the way that is needed, with the urgency that is necessary.
I mean, although I'm talking about we should all do our thing, but the bottom line is government's got to do something.
I think if you can make people understand that every single decision they make in their own lives literally is going to affect everything.
I never get depressed by all of this, because why would you get depressed? It's just an excuse to not have any action.
Education is critical.
Well, we taught it at school, so I think it would have been year 6, so it would have been 11. We were taught about greenhouse gases along with acid rain and stuff like that, and that's when you started to think about it. And used to tell my mum not to use the dishwasher and stuff like that. So maybe the way we educate our children, it's not enough to just talk about climate change or environmental issues at school if they actually then don't see it, they don't practice themselves. So instead of keeping our children in classes, let's go on the playground and let's have them interact with the lands and insects and animals. So in that way, they can understand. They've never seen a chicken in their whole lives if they grew up in big cities. So they have no idea how a chicken is, what a chicken is.
I'd be very surprised to meet a person who's anti-planet.
Again, many years back, I remember actually an engineer talking about the scale of the task and talking about it being of the same scale in terms of expense as a war. But when we have to fight a war, we find the money. We don't say, oh, is it cost effective? We just say we have to do this. And this is one of those tasks. We have to do it. And we have to find the money.
There is no way you can persuade people to change their mind by shouting at them. And if you give them a whole load of facts, you just stop listening. Who wants to hear that? But if people are clearly enjoying what they're doing and welcomed, and they can still make mistakes, then why wouldn't you start taking a small amount of action on climate change? And that would gradually perhaps become bigger.
I think it's quite hard to to tell a good story about change here that would encourage people to take it on and believe they could be players.
Have a conversation with anyone every day about climate change, just a small one, so that it's on the agenda, people talk about it.
To be fair, I feel like I've been learning about climate change like my whole life. Like they start from like when you're like 8, 9 years old, your year 6 SATs, they include climate change, and then it goes up into key stage 3, key stage 4, key stage 5. It's all about climate change, but you learn so much about it, but they don't actually act on it. Like they just teach you, but no one actually acts on it. You don't see the government even acting on it. So
you don't know what to do with that knowledge that you're getting.
Exactly. But you know so much about it, but you don't know how to act on it.